My parents sold my dying grandmother's $95,000 piano to buy my sister a Mercedes. They thought Grandma was too weak to notice and that I was too scared to speak up. They were wrong. When I whispered the truth to her in hospice, she didn't cry. She simply picked up her phone, made one call, and said 7 words that would leave my parents homeless. Before I tell you what those words were and how my mother's birthday party turned into a legal nightmare, please take a second to like this video. I am 28 years old, and last month my parents liquidated my inheritance while the owner was still breathing. They auctioned off the vintage Steinway my grandmother swore was mine, taking the $95,000 to purchase a luxury vehicle for my younger sister. They assumed Grandma was too frail in hospice to ever discover the theft. They assumed I was too timid to whisper the truth. They were mistaken on both counts. When I finally revealed what they had done, she didn't weep, she didn't shout. She calmly retrieved her mobile, punched in a contact, and spoke a single sentence that would dismantle everything my parents believed they possessed. Before I reveal those specific words and the chaos that unfolded at my mother's 60th birthday celebration, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to Winds of Thought, but only if you appreciate stories about justice served. Cold. Leave a comment telling me where you're watching from and the current time. Now, let me transport you to the afternoon where this nightmare began. The day my grandmother was admitted for end-of-life care. The notification arrived on a gray Tuesday, immediately following my final music tutorial. Eleanor has suffered another cardiac event, my father stated abruptly over the line. No pleasantries, no affection. She is stable, yet they are transferring her to palliative care. We are convening at the medical center in 60 minutes. I abandoned my tasks immediately. By the time I reached the facility, my parents and my sibling, Megan, were already clustered in a secluded alcove of the lobby, murmuring in hushed tones. My father, Richard Thompson, stood with a defensive posture, arms folded tight. My mother, Diane, gripped her expensive handbag as if it were oxygen. And Megan, for years my junior and eternally the golden child, was swiping through her device, barely acknowledging the gravity of the moment. Good, you have arrived, my father announced. We must distribute the duties. He didn't ask how I was coping. He didn't acknowledge the grief, just business. Someone requires to check on Mother daily, he pressed on. Diane and I have the enterprise to manage. Megan is navigating a pivotal stage with Daniel's relatives, Daniel Harrison, Megan's partner of 8 months, the scion of my father's most crucial investor. Therefore, Annabelle, my father gazed at me as though dispensing a burden. You will manage the daily visits. Your timetable is adaptable. Educators do not exactly labor late hours. I stifled the urge to scream that I instructed nearly 40 students weekly, that I managed community youth programs, that my time held merit too, but I remained silent. Naturally, I whispered, I wish to be by her side regardless. Excellent. My father was already pivoting away. Keep us informed of any alterations. As I moved toward Grandma's suite, my mother's voice floated down the corridor, intended only for Megan. At least she serves a purpose for once. I continued walking. I didn't glance back, not because the words failed to sting, but because I had grown so acclimated to this specific variety of hurt that I no longer expected anything else. Grandma Eleanor's quarters carried the scent of lavender sachets and bound paper. She demanded these comforts. They attempt to sanitize the air until it smells of chemicals. She had informed me upon my initial arrival. I refuse. If I am departing this life, I shall do so amidst the elements I cherish. She was 76, intellectually formidable, yet succumbing to heart failure. The specialists estimated weeks, perhaps a month, if fortune favored her. I stopped by every single afternoon post-work. We discussed compositions, her decades, touring the great auditoriums of the Northeast, and my pupils who couldn't decipher sheet music yet, but possess rhythm in their souls. One twilight she grasped my fingers. Her hold was frailer than before, yet her gaze remained intense. Annabelle, I require you to understand something. Anything, Grandma. The instrument. She hesitated, allowing the significance to land. My mother's grand piano. The model from 1892. I knew every curve of it. I had mastered my first chords on those keys at age 7. That instrument had formed the melody of my upbringing, the solitary space in this clan where I felt recognized. It belongs to you, she declared resolutely. I have already informed Richard and Diane. I told them last month with witnesses. That heirloom is yours. I recalled that discussion vividly. My father's jaw clenching, my mother trading a glance with Megan, my sister sighing and whispering about nostalgic clutter. Grandma, you are not obligated to do that. I desire to. She pressed my hand. You are the sole person who comprehends its worth. Vow that you will maintain it. I vow. It. She grinned then, a sagacious expression that seemed to harbor mysteries I couldn't yet perceive. There are certain things richer than currency, child, and certain individuals who must absorb that reality through suffering. A fortnight later, the world shifted. Grandma had requested I retrieve vintage snapshots from her residence visuals. Of her touring era, she wished to view one final time. I retained a key, so I motored over after classes on a storm-soaked Thursday. The residence was silent, unnervingly so. I stepped through the entryway, past the formal dining area, and into the parlor where the Steinway had rested for 30 years. The alcove was vacant, my lungs seized. Where the instrument should have resided, there was nothing but a rectangular depression in the rug. A phantom of something that had breathed there for decades, now brutally extracted. My fingers trembled. As I retrieved my mobile, Mom, my voice fractured. Where is Grandma's piano? A silence, then my mother's tone, nonchalant and brushing me off. Your father managed it. Adult concerns, Anna. You need not fret over it. Managed it? How? Where did it go? I said, do not worry about it, Mom. Click. She disconnected. I stood in that barren parlor for an eternity, gazing at the indentation in the weave. The rain lashed the glass. Distant thunder grumbled. I drove to my parents' estate that night. My father answered the portal, grasping a tumbler of whiskey. Appearing irritated by the intrusion, the piano, I stated. What have you done? He didn't blink. Liquidated it. Secured $95,000. Excellent valuation. The earth pitched sideways. You sold it? Grandma declared it was mine. Grandma is expiring, Anna. He sipped his liquor. She requires no instrument, and neither do you. Behind him I detected the jingle of metal. Megan materialized in the corridor, beaming. New fob for a new ride. You purchased her a vehicle? My tone was monotone, with Grandma's legacy. My father shrugged as if I'd inquired about the humidity. Mercedes-Benz. Megan requires the correct image for the Harrisons. Daniel's clan is meticulous regarding status. That heirloom was intended for me, and what would you achieve with it? My mother materialized behind my father, arms folded. You instruct toddler music sessions, Anna. You do not tour. You lack the square footage. Megan required those funds for her prospects. Her prospects. I echoed the phrase, savoring the acrid taste. Megan paraded into the entryway, dangling her new fob like a championship medal. Cease the jealousy. Anna, it is unflattering. She grinned with too many teeth. Perhaps if you selected a superior profession, you could purchase luxury items too. I observed my parents, my sibling, and the existence they had constructed where I was consistently the footnote, always the one whose requirements were last. Does Grandma know? Quiet. Does she realize you sold her piano? My mother's expression calcified. She is in palliative care, Annabelle. She is medicated half the time. She need not know anything that might distress her. You mean you prefer? She doesn't know? I mean, my mother stepped nearer, her pitch lowering to something frigid and menacing, that if you inform her and it induces stress and an incident occurs, that liability falls on you. Do you desire to be culpable for killing your grandmother? The allegation hung in the atmosphere like a toxin. I should have retreated. The previous Annabelle would have, but something had realigned within me. Something had finally shattered. Grandma possesses a right to know the fate of her property, I stated softly, and I refused to deceive her. I pivoted and departed before they could retort. I didn't slumber that evening. My flat felt tighter than typical, a humble one-bedroom. My parents had consistently ridiculed as evidence of my mediocrity. I sat on my thrifted sofa staring at a framed image on the shelf. Grandma Eleanor at her closing recital 20 years prior. Her fingers suspended above the keys, her visage glowing with intent. That exact piano, the one they had auctioned like trash. My mother's threat circled my mind. If an incident occurs, that is on you. Was she correct? If I confessed, would the shock damage her? Would I be inflicting more agony in her concluding days? But then I recalled what Grandma had consistently instructed me. Truth can lacerate, she had stated once when I was 12 and hesitated to confess a failed exam. But falsehoods lacerate deeper, they merely take longer. I drew my knees to my chest and contemplated the last 28 years. Every instance I remained mute to preserve harmony. Every instance I accepted scraps because resistance felt useless. Every instance I diminished myself so my family could feel expansive. And where had it led me? Here, isolated, unseen, witnessing. Them erase Grandma's desires like her utterings meant zero. If I remained mute now, I wasn't preserving peace. I was becoming an accomplice. By 3 a.m, I had reached my verdict. Grandma merited the facts. She merited knowing that. Her offspring had pilfered from her, deceived her, and presumed she was too feeble to count anymore. And perhaps, just perhaps, I deserved to cease apologizing for existing. I set my alert for dawn. I would visit the facility before work. I would reveal everything. Grandma was conscious when I entered, bolstered against her cushions, observing. The daybreak through the pain. You appear as though you haven't rested, she noted gently. I haven't. I dragged a seat near her mattress, grasped her hand. Grandma, I must tell you something, and it is going to sting. Her eyes, still acute despite the illness, examined my features. Then speak it, so I did. The vacant area in her parlor. The $95,000. The Mercedes-Benz shimmering. And Megan's title. My father's nonchalant rejection, my mother's intimidation. I recited the entirety of it, bracing myself for weeping, for gasps, for the sort of ruin that might shatter what remained of her delicate heart. Instead, Grandma Eleanor released a protracted, steady exhalation, not a wheeze of agony, not a shriek of treachery, a sigh. The exhale of someone who had anticipated this outcome. Grandma, I murmured. She swiveled to face me, and her look wasn't grief-stricken. It was tranquil, bordering on acceptance. I suspected this might occur, darling. You suspected? I know my son. Her tone was unwavering. I have observed him evolve into this man for 40 years. I prayed he would alter, yet I also equipped myself for the likelihood that he wouldn't. My thoughts sprinted. Equipped how? She didn't respond explicitly. Instead, she reached toward her knitstand. Pass me my device, would you? I handed it over, bewildered. She navigated her contacts with unexpected agility, located a name, and tapped dial. Then she activated the speaker, 3 tones. Then A. Male voice, resonant and calculated. Eleanor, how are you faring? I am fading, Harold. But I am lucid and the moment has arrived. A hesitation. I comprehend. When? Sunday. Diane's birthday celebration. At my residence, I will organize the paperwork. Gratitude, old friend. She terminated the connection and gazed at me with a slight knowing smirk. Grandma, I stared at her. Who was Harold? Harold Jennings. She placed the mobile down carefully. He has served as my counsel for 30 years. He was your grandfather's nearest confidant. You retain your own counsel. I possess many things your father is unaware of, Annabelle. Her eyes sparked despite the fatigue carved into her countenance. Richard presumes he comprehends every facet of my affairs. He has always assumed that is his greatest flaw. I felt as though I was positioned at the brink of something immense, gazing down into depths I couldn't perceive. What is occurring on Sunday at Mom's party? Justice. Grandma compressed my fingers. Delayed perhaps, but justice nonetheless. I don't follow. You need not follow everything yet. She reclined against her bedding, suddenly appearing more drained. I just require you to perform one task for me. Anything. Attend the gathering. Dress elegantly and bring your patients. A phantom of a grin. The variety of patients I instructed when you were mastering Chopin and desired to hurl the sheets across the studio. I nearly chuckled despite the tension. That severe? Worse. Her expression softened, but vital. Your father and mother must learn that deeds have repercussions. And I have spent 5 years ensuring that when the lesson finally arrived, it would be permanent. 5 years. She had been engineering something for 5 years. Grandma, what did you arrange? She shut her eyes, weariness triumphing. I shielded you, darling, the way I ought to have shielded you continuously. I am only regretful it took me so long to execute. I sat with her until she drifted off, my brain swirling with inquiries. Harold Jennings, Sunday, my mother's gala in Grandma's abode. Something was poised to shift. I could sense it. I just didn't know the specifics. 2 days later, I found myself seated in a compact legal suite on the periphery of Philadelphia. Harold Jennings was nothing like I had anticipated. He was in his late 60s with platinum hair and gold-rimmed spectacles. His gestures were unhurried but exact. His workspace smelled of aged leather and paper, lined floor to ceiling with statutes. Annabelle Thompson, he offered his palm. Your grandmother speaks of you incessantly. It is a joy to finally encounter you. Mr. Jennings, Harold, please. He motioned to a seat opposite his desk. Sit. Your grandmother requested I clarify a few matters prior to Sunday. I sat. My hands were vibrating slightly. Your grandmother is an extraordinary woman, Harold commenced. She is also far more perceptive than her offspring credit her for. She has been monitoring and preparing. Preparing what, exactly? He interlaced his fingers on the wood. Tell me, Annabelle, do you know who possesses the title to the house your parents occupy? They do. Grandma gifted it to them when Grandpa passed. Harold's face didn't fluctuate. Is that what they informed you? It is what everyone says. Everyone is incorrect. He withdrew a dossier from his drawer and slid it toward me. Your grandmother permitted Richard and Diane to inhabit that estate rent-free, but she never transferred the deed. Not legally. Not ever. I gaped at the paper before me. The property deed, Eleanor Whitmore's name, clear as crystal. No transfer, no addendum. They have been residing in her home for 10 years, I said sluggishly, thinking it was theirs. Precisely. My head was reeling, but why would Grandma let them believe it? Because she was observing Annabelle. Harold leaned in. Watching. to see if her son would prove her apprehensions wrong. Regrettably, he did exactly what she anticipated. That night, I returned to my flat and commenced searching. Grandma had gifted me a crate of vintage keepsakes years ago, snapshots, correspondence, pressed flora from her yard. I had never examined it meticulously. It felt too intrusive, like reading a diary, but now I required answers. I located it near the base beneath a pile of bleached concert flyers. A sealed packet yellowed with time, my name inscribed in Grandma's refined script, and beneath it, 6 words. For Annabelle, when you need to understand. My fingers shook as I unsealed it. Inside was a solitary image, a duplicate of a legal form. The header was partly hidden, but I could see Grandma's autograph at the bottom dated 5 years ago. And in her handwriting, a note clipped to the edge. The house never left my hands, darling. It was only borrowed, and some borrowers do not merit the privilege. I read it thrice. Then I comprehended. Sunday's gala was being hosted at Grandma's residence, the identical house my parents treated as their dominion, where they had hosted banquets and holiday events, where they had sold the piano that sat in the parlor like it was their property, but it didn't belong to them. It never had. My father had constructed his entire sense of rank on a bedrock that didn't exist. I contemplated all the lectures he gave about tangible assets and astute investing, all the times he mocked my tiny rental while standing in a home he didn't actually own. The irony was nearly too flawless. I tucked the letter back into its sheath and placed it on my stand. Sunday was 3 days away. Whatever Grandma had schemed, it was going to occur in the space my parents had claimed as their kingdom, and they had zero concept of what was approaching. The night preceding the party, Grandma phoned. Her voice was thinner than before, and I could hear the exertion each syllable cost her, but her intellect was still razor-edged. Annabelle, are you prepared for tomorrow? I believe so. I paused. Grandma, are you certain about this? It is Mom's birthday. In front of that crowd. That is precisely why it must be tomorrow. She took a labored breath. Your father sold my piano in front of witnesses. He announced it at that family supper last month like it was his verdict to render. He didn't ask me. He didn't consider you. He assumed I was too frail and you were too mute to matter. I shut my eyes, I recall. Then you grasp why the lesson requires an audience? Her tone softened. I am not doing this for retribution, darling. Retribution is hollow. I am doing this because it is just and because you deserve to be shielded. Especially after I'm gone. Tears scalded my eyes. Grandma, I should have acted sooner. I observed how they treated you for years, and I kept hoping Richard would evolve. That was my error. Affection made me myopic for too long. It isn't your fault. Maybe not entirely, but I can still rectify it. A pause. I do not have much time remaining, Annabelle. The specialists say weeks, but I believe it is less. I can sense it, so I need to know. Do you trust me? Always. Then attend tomorrow. Wear attire that makes you feel potent. And no matter what unfolds, remember you are not the villain in this narrative. You never were. We bid good night. I pressed the phone against my ribs for a long duration after she disconnected. Tomorrow would alter the landscape. I just had to be prepared to let it. Sunday arrived with bleached winter sun and the sort of brittle air that makes outlines feel sharper. Grandma's house, my parents' borrowed house, looked almost celebratory. Someone had draped a happy 60th birthday sign across the veranda. Vehicles lined the asphalt and spilled onto the road. I parked at the distant edge and sat in my sedan for a second, collecting myself. I had selected a navy sheath, simple but refined, and pearl studs Grandma had gifted me for my 21st. My hair secured neatly. Armor for a skirmish I didn't fully comprehend. Inside, the residence buzzed with roughly 30 guests. Aunts and uncles I saw only at festivals, neighbors from the old era, a handful of my father's corporate allies. I recognized Mr. Harrison near the hearth, Daniel standing beside him with Megan on his arm. The parlor drew my gaze instantly. The corner where the Steinway had rested for 30 years was vacant. Someone had positioned a massive potted fern, there attempting to plug the void. It looked absurd, a leafy green apology for something that couldn't be erased. My mother stood near the buffet in a scarlet designer gown, accepting praise like a monarch receiving taxes. My father hovered nearby, navigating the room with rehearsed charisma, and in the distant corner, nearly invisible among the throng, sat Harold Jennings. His leather case rested beside his seat. He caught my gaze across the floor and gave an almost undetectable nod. I nodded back. My Aunt Margaret, Grandma's younger sibling, appeared beside me. "Anna dear, how's Eleanor?" "Truly? Fatigued," I said honestly, but still sharp. She always was the intellectual one. Aunt Margaret's eyes drifted to the empty nook. I noticed the piano was absent. Richard stated Eleanor wished to liquidate it. I opened my mouth to clarify, but my father's voice sliced through the noise. "Everyone, if I could have your focus, please." My father stood in the nexus of the room, crystal goblet hoisted, commanding the area like he owned it, which I now knew he didn't. Today we honor 60 magnificent years of Diane Thompson. Applause, my mother glowed. And I also wish to take a moment to share some thrilling family updates. My gut plummeted. As some of you know, our daughter Megan has been courting Daniel Harrison, son of my cherished friend and partner James. He gestured toward Daniel, who grinned politely. And to celebrate her luminous future, we have a unique surprise. He shepherded the entire party outdoors where a shimmering silver Mercedes-Benz sat in the drive, a crimson ribbon perched on its bonnet. "A gift," my father announced vaguely, made possible by Grandma Eleanor's benevolence. She liquidated her antique piano to invest in her granddaughter's trajectory. Megan squealed, threw her limbs around my father, and posed for snapshots. Beside the machine, I stood frozen on the deck. He was doing it again, editing the history, making himself the protagonist while erasing Grandma's desires entirely. A woman I didn't recognize leaned toward her spouse. "Wasn't that instrument supposed to go to the other granddaughter?" "The music tutor?" Her husband shrugged. Guest plans evolved. Aunt Margaret appeared beside me, her face ashen. "Anna, did Eleanor truly consent to this?" Before I could answer, Megan spotted me and called out, her voice dripping with artificial. "Sugar, Anna, come take a photo. Don't be envious. I am sure Grandma will leave you something too." Perhaps her stack of outdated sheet music. Scattered chuckles from the group. My hands were vibrating. My vision smeared with tears I refused to shed. And then behind me, I heard the snap of a latch opening. Everyone began filing back inside, but Aunt Margaret blocked my father's route. "Richard." Her voice was unwavering, but I could see her fingers trembling. "I need to ask you something." My father's smile didn't falter. "Can it wait, Margaret? We are in the midst of... Did you ask Eleanor before you sold that piano?" The query landed like a boulder in a stagnant pond. Conversations nearby stuttered to a halt. "Mother's in hospice," my father said smoothly. "She is not in a condition to make these varieties of decisions. We did what was optimal for her. I spoke with her this morning." Aunt Margaret's voice grew louder. "She is clear-headed, Richard, completely lucid. And she told me you never asked her permission. You never even informed her." More people were listening now. I saw Mr. Harrison frown, saw Daniel shift awkwardly. My mother pushed forward, face flushed. "Margaret, this is my birthday. Let us not manufacture a scene." "A scene?" Aunt Margaret laughed, but there was no mirth in it. "Diane, Your husband sold Eleanor's most precious possession without her knowledge and used the funds for a car. If anyone is manufacturing a scene, it is not me." The room had gone mute. 30 pairs of eyes ping-ponged between my aunt and my parents. My father's composure cracked just slightly. "This is a private matter. It doesn't need to be debated in public." Actually, a new voice said from behind us, "I think public is exactly where it needs to be debated." I turned. Harold Jennings was standing now, his case open, a file of papers in his hand. He walked toward the center of the room with the tranquil authority of a man who had done this 1,000 times. "Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Harold Jennings. I am Eleanor Whitmore's attorney." My father's face went bleached. The silence was choking. Harold positioned himself near the empty corner where the piano used to reside. A choice that felt calculated. "I apologize for interrupting the festivities," he said, his voice carrying effortlessly across the space. "But Eleanor Whitmore has asked me to address some urgent matters regarding her estate. Given the circumstances, she felt it was vital that her family and those close to them hear this directly." My father found his voice first. "My mother has." "An attorney? Since when?" "Since 30 years ago, Richard." Harold's tone was civil, but lacerating. "I also represented your father. You would know this if you had ever bothered to inquire." Muffled gasps. Someone in the rear whispered, "Oh, my God, this is scandalous." My mother stepped forward. "Eleanor is dying. She is not in her right mind. Whatever papers you hold, Mrs. Thompson." Harold raised a palm, silencing her. "I visited Eleanor this morning. Her nurse Carol can confirm she is fully competent and lucid. She dictated specific instructions for today's gathering." He opened the folder and removed a page. "Now, I understand there has been some confusion about property ownership, so let me clarify." He held up the sheet. "This is the deed to the house we're currently standing in." I watched my father's face drain of blood. Notice the name on the deed. Eleanor Whitmore, not Richard Thompson. Not Diane Thompson. Harold paused, letting the words sink in. "This house has never been transferred. It was never gifted. Your parents have been living here rent-free for 10 years at Eleanor's generosity. Nothing more." The room erupted in murmurs. My father grabbed the edge of his seat, steadying himself. Megan stared at her father, confusion and panic warring on her features, and Harold Jennings wasn't finished. "That," he said quietly, "is just the prelude. If you are still watching, I am guessing you're holding your breath the same way I was." In that instant, before I tell you what Harold revealed next, I want to ask you something. Who do you think actually owns that house? A, my parents, because surely Grandma must have transferred it at some point. B, Grandma, because there has been a secret all along. C, me, because the biggest twist is yet to come. Drop your answer in the comments. Then keep watching to find out. My father's voice fractured. "This is impossible. Mother said the house was ours. She promised. She promised you could inhabit it." Harold set the deed on the dining table where everyone could view it. "She never promised ownership. There is a significant legal difference, Mr. Thompson." I watched the realization spread through the room like a virus. Mr. Harrison took a small step back from my father. One of the neighbors exchanged a knowing glance with her spouse. "For 10 years, Harold continued, you have enjoyed this property without paying rent. Utilities or property taxes all covered by Eleanor's accounts. You have treated it as your own. You have even made modifications without permission." He glanced at the modern fixtures my mother had installed last year. "Legally, you are tenants at will, and the property owner has the right to terminate that arrangement at any time." "You can't be serious." My mother's voice was piercing. "We have lived here for a decade. We have invested in this house. Invested without authorization. Harold's expression didn't fluctuate. Any improvements you have made without written consent belong to the property owner, Eleanor Whitmore. Megan grabbed Daniel's arm. This is insane. Dad, tell them this. Is some kind of prank. My father couldn't speak. He was staring at the deed like it was a terminal diagnosis. I should also mention, Harold added almost casually, that Pennsylvania law takes property fraud quite seriously. Representing someone else's property as your own, particularly in business contexts, can have significant legal consequences. I saw Mr. Harrison's expression shift from confusion to cool calculation. He was looking at my father differently now, not as a partner, but as a liability. The empire my father had built on borrowed prestige was crumbling before our eyes, and Harold still had more documents in his file. Now, Harold said, pulling out a second page, we come to the matter of the trust. What trust? My father's voice was barely above a whisper. 5 years ago, Eleanor Whitmore established a separate trust, independent of the will that was shared with your family. This trust was created specifically to protect her most valuable assets in the event of, he paused delicately, financial misconduct. Financial misconduct? My mother sputtered. We are her family. Family members can still commit misconduct, Mrs. Thompson, as recent events have demonstrated. Harold withdrew a thick document, its pages crisp and official looking. Per the terms of this trust, the following assets are irrevocably assigned to a single beneficiary. The property we are standing in, Eleanor's financial accounts, and all items of sentimental value, including the 1892 Steinway piano that was recently sold without authorization. He looked up, and his gaze settled directly on me. The sole beneficiary is Annabelle Rose Thompson. The room went vacuum silent. Megan's shriek broke it. What? This is fraud. She was manipulated, my father shouted. That little, he pointed at me, face contorted with rage. Richard. Harold's voice turned to ice. I would advise you to choose your next words very carefully. Everything said here today has been witnessed by over 30 people. Aunt Margaret moved to stand beside me. Her hand found mine and squeezed. Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing. Harold continued. She spent 5 years watching, waiting, hoping her son would prove her wrong. Instead, he sold her most treasured possession to buy a car for the granddaughter who never visits her. He paused. Actions have consequences, Mr. Thompson. This is yours. My mother was weeping now. Megan looked like she might vomit, and I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Couldn't believe what I was hearing. Harold let the chaos settle for a moment. Before continuing, regarding the piano sale, he pulled out another sheet. Since the Steinway was part of the trust and Annabelle is the designated beneficiary, the sale conducted without the trustee's consent, that is, Eleanor, constitutes unauthorized disposal of trust assets. What does that mean? Megan's voice was microscopic. It means the $95,000 must be returned to the trust within 30 days. Harold's gaze swept across my parents and sister. Failure to comply will result in civil litigation for misappropriation of trust property. Given the clear paper trail, I assure you the outcome would not be favorable for your family. My father laughed, a hollow, desperate sound. We don't have $95,000 sitting around. The money went to the car. Then I suggest you find a way to liquidate that asset. Harold nodded toward the window where the Mercedes was still visible in the drive, red ribbon and all. The dealer might accept a return, though you will likely take a significant loss. Megan burst into tears. My car? You're taking my car? I am not taking anything, Miss Thompson. I am simply explaining the legal consequences of your family's choices. I watched Megan look to Daniel for support, but he had already stepped away from her, his expression carefully neutral. His father was whispering something in his ear, and neither of them looked sympathetic. Additionally, Harold added, Eleanor has asked me to inform you that your living arrangement in this house will be formally restructured. You may continue to reside here temporarily, but a proper lease agreement will be required. A lease? My mother's voice was barely audible. In the house we have lived in for 10 years? In the house, Harold corrected gently, that you never owned. The room had gone deathly quiet. Every eye was on me. My father turned slowly, his face twisted with betrayal and fury. You did this. You poisoned her against us. I stood my ground. No, Dad, I didn't do anything. My voice was steadier than I expected. Grandma made these decisions 5 years ago. Before I knew anything about them, I only found out this week. Lair. My mother's voice shook with venom. You have always been jealous of Megan, of our family's success. This is your revenge. Revenge? I felt something cold and hard crystallize inside me. I didn't sell Grandma's piano without asking her. I didn't spend the money on a car for myself. I didn't lie to everyone about what happened. I stepped forward, looking directly at my mother. I am not the one who said, at least she serves a purpose, when I agreed to visit Grandma every day. I am not the one who hung up on me when I asked questions. And I am not the one who threatened me, saying I would be responsible for killing Grandma if I told her the truth. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Aunt Margaret's hand tightened on mine. I spent 28 years being invisible in this. Family. My voice didn't waver. I accepted it because I thought that was what love required. Shrinking yourself to make others comfortable. I looked at my father, at my mother, at Megan still crying over her doomed Mercedes. But Grandma taught me something different. She taught me that loving yourself means standing up for what is right, even when it costs you everything. I took a breath. So here is what I want you to understand. I am not apologizing anymore. I am not staying silent anymore. And I am done pretending everything is fine when it isn't. The room was absolutely still. After the crowd began to disperse, slowly, awkwardly, with whispered goodbyes and avoided eye contact, Harold pulled me aside. Annabelle, we need to discuss next steps. I nodded, still feeling surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body. Legally, you have several options. He spoke quietly so only I could hear. You could demand immediate eviction. Give in. The circumstances, your grandmother would support whatever you decide. I looked across the room at my parents. My father had collapsed into a chair, head in his hands. My mother stood frozen by the window, mascara streaked down her face. Megan had disappeared, probably outside mourning her Mercedes. They looked broken. Part of me, a small wounded part, wanted to twist the knife to make them feel every ounce of the pain they had caused me over 28 years. But that wasn't who I wanted to be. I don't want to throw them out, I said slowly, not immediately. Harold raised an eyebrow. Are you certain? Yes, I took a breath. Here is what I want. The $95,000 gets returned within 90 days, not 30. I will give them time to sell the car and figure things out. They can stay in the house with a formal lease agreement at a minimal rent. After Grandma ... I swallowed hard. After she passes, they will have 12 months to find somewhere else to live. That is remarkably generous given everything. Maybe. I met his eyes. But I am not doing this to punish them. I am doing it because it is right, and because I refuse to become the kind of person they are. Harold studied me for a long moment, then he nodded, a hint of respect in his expression. Your grandmother said you would respond this way. She is very proud of you, Annabelle. I know. My voice cracked. I know she is. The agreement was drafted right there on the dining room table, witnessed by Aunt Margaret and 2 of the remaining guests. My father signed without looking at me. My mother's hand shook so badly she could barely hold the pen. Neither of them said a word. By the time the last signature was in place, the house had emptied. Mr. Harrison and Daniel had left without saying goodbye. I later learned Daniel had driven away while Megan was still outside crying. The birthday cake sat untouched. The banner drooped sadly over the front porch. Aunt Margaret hugged me tight before leaving. "You did the right thing. Sweetheart, Eleanor would be so proud." "She's proud," I said softly. "I talked to her this morning." As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A video call request from Grandma's hospice number. I answered, walking to the empty corner of the living room where the piano used to be. Her face appeared on screen, pale but peaceful. Nurse Carol was visible. In the background, smiling, "My brave girl." Grandma's voice was weak but warm. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," I admitted, "and relieved and sad all at once." "That is how courage feels, sweetheart. It is never comfortable. I didn't throw them out. I gave them time." "I know." Harold texted me. Her eyes glistened. "You are a better person than they deserve, Annabelle. But that is why I chose you." I pressed my hand against the screen, wishing I could hold her hand instead. "Thank you, Grandma, for everything, for protecting me. Don't thank me." She smiled, but it was tinged with sorrow. "Just live well. Play music. Be happy. That is how you thank me." "I will." "I know you will, sweetheart." She closed her eyes. "I know you will." I know a lot of you are probably thinking, so that is it? Did your parents ever change? The honest answer is complicated. Not every story has a perfect ending, but every story has a lesson. Before I tell you what happened in the months that followed, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family? How hard was it? Drop your story in the comments. I read every single one. The first week after the party was chaos. News travels fast in small social circles, and the story of what happened at Diane Thompson's 60th birthday spread like wildfire. My father's business partners suddenly became unavailable for meetings. Old friends stopped returning calls. Mr. Harrison formally withdrew from the joint venture they had been planning. When my father demanded an explanation, the response was cold. "I cannot do business with someone I cannot trust." "Richard, if you would deceive your own mother, what would you do to a partner?" The deal would have been worth over $200,000. Gone in an instant, Megan had to return the Mercedes. The dealership only offered her $80,000, $15,000, less than my parents had paid. She screamed at the salesman for 20 minutes before finally signing the paperwork. Daniel broke up with her 3 days later via text message. "My family thinks it is best if we take some time apart." The message read, translation, "They wanted nothing to do with the Thompson." Family drama. My sister, who had always been the golden child, found herself suddenly ordinary. No car, no wealthy boyfriend, no special status. She had to borrow my mother's old Honda to get to job interviews. I didn't gloat. I didn't reach out. I simply went about my life, teaching piano to my students, visiting Grandma every evening. But I would be lying if I said there wasn't some quiet satisfaction in watching the facades crumble. My father had spent years measuring success in appearances, the house, the car, the right connections. Now he was learning that none of it had ever been real. The foundation he had built his identity on was borrowed, and borrowed things always have to be returned. 3 weeks after the birthday party, the hospice called me at 6 a.m. "You should come now," the nurse said gently. "She is asking for you." I drove faster than I should have, my heart pounding the entire way. Grandma's room was quiet when I arrived. The morning light filtered through the curtains, casting soft, golden shadows across her bed. Her breathing was shallow, her face paper thin, but her eyes were open, and when she saw me, she smiled. "My Annabelle." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Come sit with me." I took her hand. It felt so fragile, like holding a bird. "I have something to tell you," she said slowly. "Something I should have said years ago." "What is it, Grandma?" I'm sorry." I blinked. "Sorry for what?" "For not acting sooner." A tear slipped down her cheek. "I watched how they treated you year after year. I kept hoping Richard would change, that Diane would see your value. I made excuses because I didn't want to believe my own son could be so double." She trailed off. "It is not your fault," I said, my own tears falling now. "Maybe not entirely, but I could have done more. I could have protected you earlier instead of waiting until I was dying." She squeezed my hand weakly. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. You deserved better. You gave me everything that mattered," I said fiercely. "Music, love, the knowledge that I was worth something. That is more than they ever gave me." She smiled, and for a moment she looked like the grandmother I remembered from childhood. Strong, radiant, full of life. "I am so proud of you, Annabelle. You have a good heart, but you finally learned to guard it. You taught me that, then I did something right." Her eyes fluttered closed. "I'm tired now, sweetheart. Stay with me always." Grandma Eleanor passed away that evening, peacefully with my hand in hers. The funeral was held 5 days later at the small church she had attended for 50 years. Per her wishes, it was simple. No elaborate flowers, no ostentatious displays. Just music, memories, and the people who truly loved her. I played the piano. During the service, not the Steinway that was gone, but a modest upright that the church had owned for decades. I played Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, the first piece Grandma ever taught me. The church was half full. Aunt Margaret sat in the front row, tissues clutched in her hand. Grandma's friends from her performing days filled several pews. White-haired women who remembered when Eleanor Whitmore had been a name that meant something in the classical music world. My parents sat in the back. They didn't approach me before the service, or during, or after. My mother wore dark sunglasses that hid her eyes. My father stared straight ahead like a man attending his own sentencing. Megan wasn't there at all. "Too emotionally fragile," my mother explained to someone who asked. I delivered the eulogy. I spoke about Grandma's music, her wisdom, her quiet strength. I spoke about how she taught me that love wasn't about grand gestures. It was about showing up day after day and choosing to see someone for who they really were. I didn't mention the drama. The funeral wasn't the place. After the service, my father started walking toward me. I saw him hesitate, take a step, then stop when my mother grabbed his arm and pulled him away. He never made it across the room. Maybe he wanted to apologize, maybe not. I will never know. But I had already made peace with the fact that some apologies never come, and some aren't needed anymore. 6 months later, I moved into Grandma's house. It felt strange at first, walking through rooms filled with her presence, sleeping in the guest bedroom I had known since childhood, but slowly it began to feel like home. I used part of the returned money to buy a new piano. Not a Steinway, those. Cost far more than $95,000, but a beautiful Yamaha grand that filled the corner where Grandma's piano had once stood. Different, but meaningful in its own way. A new beginning. I started teaching private lessons on weekends. My first student was Aunt Margaret's granddaughter, Sophie. 8 years old, bright-eyed, with the same impatient energy I had had at her age. When she played her first complete scale, I cried that my parents moved out 2 months after Grandma's death. They didn't wait the full 12 months I had offered. They said they couldn't live somewhere with so many painful memories. think they just couldn't stand the reminder of what they had lost. They bought a small condo across town. My father's business was struggling, scaled down to half its former size. My mother joined a different social club, one where people didn't know the family's history. We didn't speak. Not out of anger exactly, just distance. Some gaps are too wide to bridge, but I wasn't bitter. Bitterness is exhausting. And I had a life to build. In the evenings, I would sit at the piano and play until the stars came out. Sometimes choppin', sometimes batch, sometimes just improvised melodies that went nowhere and everywhere. Grandma's presence lingered in those moments, and the smell of lavender from the garden she had planted, and the creak of the old floorboards, and the way the light fell through the windows at sunset. She was gone, but she was everywhere, and I was finally free. 8 months after the funeral, my phone rang. Megan. I stared at the screen for 3 rings before answering. Anna. Her voice sounded different, smaller, less certain. Megan. Silence stretched between us. 28 years of sisterhood, reduced to awkward pauses. I'm not calling to ask for anything, she said finally. I just thought I wanted to say something. Okay, I have been thinking a lot about everything that happened, about how I acted. She took a shaky breath. I was so angry at first, at you, at Grandma, at everyone. I thought you had stolen something from me, and now ... now. Another pause. Now I am working at a marketing firm, entry level. I ride the bus because I cannot afford a car. And I have started going to therapy. I didn't respond. I just listened. My therapist says I have a lot of unpacking to do about Mom and Dad, about how I was raised, about why I thought I deserved everything without earning it. She laughed, but it was hollow. Turns out being the favorite isn't actually a gift. It is a trap. I am glad you are working through it, I said. I am not asking you to forgive me. Her voice cracked. I don't deserve that. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. Why you did what you did. Why Grandma did what she did. Grandma loved you too, Megan. She just couldn't reward behavior that hurt other people. I know. A sniffle. I know that now. We sat in silence for a moment. If you ever want to talk, I said slowly, I am willing to listen, but trust takes time to rebuild. I understand. Good. We hung up without saying goodbye. Not out of coldness, but because neither of us knew how. Some doors, once closed, open slowly. But they can still open. It is spring now, a full year since Grandma entered hospice. Tonight I sit at my piano as the sun sets over the garden. The windows are open and a warm breeze carries the scent of jasmine and freshly cut grass. I play Grandma's favorite nocturne, the one she performed at her final concert 20 years ago. The notes drift through the empty house, filling the silence with something softer. I think about everything that has happened. The betrayal, the reveal, the boundaries I never thought I would have the courage to set. I think about Grandma, her strength, her patience, her quiet determination to protect me, even when I didn't know I needed protecting. I think about my parents in their small condo, rebuilding a life that will never be quite what they imagined. About Megan riding the bus, learning for the first time what it means to earn something. I don't hate them. Hate takes too much energy. But I don't need them anymore either. And that is a kind of freedom I never expected to find. The nocturne ends. The final notes hang in the air, then fade into the evening quiet. I look at Grandma's photograph on the piano. Her at 60, radiant fingers poised over the keys of the Steinway. I will never play again. I am doing okay, Grandma, I whisper. I am more than okay. Somewhere I like to think she hears me. I close the piano lid, stand, and walk to the window. The stars are just beginning to emerge. Pinpricks of light in the darkening sky. I don't have the original piano. I don't have the family I thought I had, but I have something better. I have myself. I have boundaries. I have a life I built on truth instead of silence. And that is the real inheritance Grandma left me, and that is my story. Thank you for staying until the end. If this resonated with you, if you have ever had to stand up for yourself in a family that made you feel invisible, I want you to know you are not alone. Setting boundaries isn't selfish. It is how you honor your own worth. Hit like if this story meant something to you. Subscribe if you want more stories like this, and check the description for more videos I think you'll love.